Welcome to Shenanigans Ensue with
Mary SanGiovanni!
Hi folks, welcome to Cosmic Shenanigans. I'm Mary SanGiovanni, and as usual, I'm up to shenanigans of cosmic proportions. Although, for this episode and the next episode, our shenanigans may be a little bit shorter than usual. This week, I am recovering from an awesome time at Nikon, although I'm not really feeling that well. I have a little bit of a cold, so this episode may be a little shorter, and next week I am heading off to Scares That Care. So we're going to have some interesting stuff, but probably not as long as some usual episodes. This week, what I'd like to talk about is Brian Hodge's novella, I'll Bring You the Birds from Out of the Sky. It was published in 2017 from Cemetery Dance Publications. There are spoilers in this, so if you haven't read it, go forth and read it first, and then come back and listen to this. Because there are some spoilers, but I found it absolutely awesome. I think that Brian Hodge's work in general is just great. And what I liked a lot about this particular novella, which is clearly cosmic horror, is the innovative repurposing of cosmic horror tropes. That's one of the things that I think, in my opinion, this is one way that we're going to keep modern cosmic horror new and interesting and not let it stagnate, is that it has all the elements of cosmic horror, but we're doing different things with them. Now, there's a pleasant nod to Pickman's model in this novella, and we're going to come back to why that is. But it also follows that tradition of strange growing things, a cosmic horror staple that, harkens back to like The Color Out of Space, that kind of thing. What is not all-encompassing out there in the universe is often all-pervasive and entrenching underground, and that's the case with this novella. While much of Lovecraft's work emphatically warns against and fears the other, there's some of his work that embraces, or at the very least resigns itself to, acknowledgement and acceptance of the alienness of self. If you take something like The Shadow over Innsmouth, or The Outsider, there's that alienness that you come to accept as a part of you. Now, whether that alienness is meant in the grand scheme of things to represent, say, the ravages of age or terminal illness, or whether it's meant to be deep psychological or personality change, or maybe even the loss of religion or faith, or loss of faith in science, maybe, I'm not sure. It could be all those things. Some scholars think that this was Lovecraft's way of processing a fundamental shift away from racist beliefs. Now, we don't have much to prove that. I think we would have needed more time. He would have needed more time in life. But there are some scholars that think that a lot of these types of stories where one becomes the other are that kind of thing. Others think that the crux of the horror of the story is that some fates are worse than death, that some transformations strip the humanity away from us, and that acceptance of the loss of that humanity is essentially the ultimate loss. That's the horror, that we're okay with being less than human. So that's the kind of novella we're working with here. Lovecraft, if we go back to Lovecraft, he's established in a lot of his short fiction this theme of legacy. The notion that generations of a family are connected as much by occult and supernatural forces, usually evil forces, both purposefully and accidentally summoned, as they are by blood. There's a sense of that in this book, although it's used more to suggest that generations indicate a sense of timelessness, of the ongoing survival of something that outlasts grandparents to parents to children, and on and on. There's also, as is common in many cosmic horror stories, and nearly all of Lovecraft's stories, a sense of rural isolation. Now that serves two purposes, in my opinion. In addition to providing the necessary privacy a cosmic entity may need to run riot unchecked for generations, there's the implication that when shut away from the eyes of the world, people revert to primitive behavior, primitive worship of far more violent, primal, and indifferent gods, for instance, and also far less civilized behavior. And to me, there's a kind of subtle horror in that, in the idea that we give up our humanity voluntarily and far more quickly and easily to our own dark compulsions than to the slow assimilation of some kind of ancient evil. Now, one of the things I like is that this novella uses, but doesn't overuse, the notion of a cult. We've talked in prior episodes about the difference between a cult and a cult. A cult is almost an indispensable aspect of any kind of cosmic horror. There is some sense of hidden knowledge or hidden information. Cults are almost always used in cosmic horror as well, but they don't have to be. What I like about the way this novella uses a cult is that it's on the far... There's an idea that there was... And cult, the word cult, to the best of my knowledge, is never used in the novella. But it is a group of people who once lived on the far side of the mountain of this small rural town. And that this group has ties to the cosmic entity of the story. In fact, it's their lullaby, or perhaps it's some kind of incantation, from which the title of the novella comes, "I'll bring you the birds from out of the sky." What is interesting about the way that this novella uses it is that the function of the cult is as atmosphere and sense of history, time, and place, rather than as the villain or the foil to the good guys. In some ways, the cult has actually traded roles with the usual cosmic gods and monsters. It once existed as a dangerous thing, a thing that once controlled the mountainside and affected everybody in its proximity, but now has been relegated to legend over time, leaving only fossils, figuratively, of itself. And I like that. I like that there's a cult, but it's used in a different way. It's used rather than as these, sort of hooded, slavering, crazy people that are out to get the good guys, that it's actually really sort of solidifying a history of this area and showing that showing I guess the cosmic scope of time that this particular entity is privy to, that it can continue on over generations. And I also like that their particular lullaby, which is only mentioned once or twice in the story, and it is mentioned as something of a lullaby and not an incantation, but the passage in its entirety actually sounds potentially like a spell, and it speaks to a certain level of power and an appreciation of this sort of combination of nature and the supernatural, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. One of the things I did want to mention is that paintings figure prominently into the plot of the novella. If you read the dust jacket copy, what the book is about, it really does sound like a nod to Pickman's Model, which is, of course, one of Lovecraft's stories about a painter who paints some pretty horrible things. What we have here is a rustic from several generations prior who created a large number of paintings that are potentially worth money to his granddaughter. And this painter's crowning achievement is a triptych, which, in case you're not aware, a triptych is a painting in 3 pieces, and usually the 3 pieces are related. A lot of times, triptychs were created for religious purposes, Father, Son, Holy Ghost, that kind of thing. The triptych, in this particular case, 2/3 of it are recovered with the rest of his paintings, which for the most part are in fairly good condition, considering the fact that they've been abandoned for probably decades. The nature of these paintings is it has to do with the technique, which is completely self-taught and which uses elements of nature from around the area. The brushes are made of fur from the animals, or pine needles from the trees. The paints themselves are mixed in with elements of the dirt or berries or things that could make a certain color that are from nature. So there's very much of this place that is imbued in these paintings. And the subject matter and technique, much like with Richard Upton Pickman, is uniquely realistic and evocative of strong emotions, usually emotions of disquiet, of, if not fear, then something bordering pretty close to it, or of an appalling sense of something dark in this landscape that is entrenched, in the very fiber of the trees and the air and the ground and the water. This triptych that he paints, 2/3 of it is available, and it shows essentially an ascension and a descent over a hill, over this mountain, because a lot of reference is made throughout the novella to the idea that one side of the mountain is where people are okay, but the far side of the mountain, almost like the dark side of the moon, there's some strange goings on, and that's what 2/3 of this triptych depict. It is assumed that that third piece, that rightward piece, that final piece, shows what is on the other side of the mountain. And so the main characters go on a quest, more or less, to go find this third and last painting. And it is this quest that leads the characters to the terrible truth about what lives on that far side of the mountain and under it, and how it has been shaping humanity for generations. So I like that it's more than just, again, in my opinion, a lot of Lovecraft's horror, the great reveals, is kind of like this mic drop, like, oh shit, this exists, boom. What I like about modern cosmic horror is this step further that says, yes, this exists. This means that we have to, rethink the way we look at the world. But what does that mean for us? What does that mean for characters that we've come to care about? And that's what I like about this novella, is that it looks at what the discovery of essentially the magic on the other side of the mountain means to the rest of the world. Now, this entity that I've made reference to, in itself, it's an interesting creature in terms of cosmic horror. It's not some, tentacled Lovecraftian alien god from outside the known universe. But it is expansive, really. And it seems capable of collective mind control, at least on a selective scale. It does tick a lot of the boxes of a cosmic horror entity. Where it's from is a mystery, and what it wants is pretty much what any entity wants. It wants to survive. And I think that aspect, the aspect of a cosmic horror entity's need for survival, is what drives a lot of what we consider indifference. We've discussed this in prior episodes, that the natural drive, or the nature of the supernatural, if you will, or of some supremely powerful being, often appears indifferent, and that its purpose often reframes our sense of superiority, security, and significance in the world. It reduces it to a microcosm of artificial power structures. But what modern horror looks to do, again, in my opinion, is to redefine our importance in the aftermath of such a reduction. Now, excuse me, that may mean becoming part of the larger monstrosity, this larger force, basically resigning oneself to becoming part of the cosmic scope of this entity, or simply becoming an engine of survival for someone or something that matters more to us than ourselves. Basically, we have to relook at what significance in the greater context of the universe means. And sometimes all that means is, being a way for somebody that we love or something that we believe in to keep going after us. I like that in this particular novella, we see two different ways that this entity can influence people. Both of them are internal, and they work their way outward toward the external. Both of these are a means for keeping this thing alive and keeping it going. But one of the things I like about this is that, and we're going to get into this a little bit more in the next episode, is that there seems to be a move in modern cosmic horror away from just announcing that this thing is so foreign and so alien that we couldn't possibly comprehend its motivations. That does have a place. I've often said, if you look at something like, say, the original Halloween movie, one of the reasons why Michael Myers is so scary is because he's the boogeyman. And by that, I mean that he is a force of unrelenting evil, a force of unrelenting death that we don't understand, that we can't talk our way out of, that we can't induce to feel empathy or sympathy for us, because it doesn't function the way we do. It doesn't think like us. It doesn't have any need for sympathy or empathy towards us, because it is a force beyond us. When the remake of that movie gave a certain humanity to Michael Myers, a certain backstory that explained where that evil came from, I think it undid that particularly frightening aspect of that character. And I think that for a long time, a lot of cosmic horror focused on this idea that these things were terrifying to us because we could not induce them towards sympathy or empathy for us, that we were essentially toys, that we were ants in their view, that what we had wanted to believe was a benevolent and loving God who thought of us as children was actually a tyrant who thought of us as a mistake. And I think that it's possible to retain a certain level of that alien thinking without undoing the frightening aspect of its indifference to us, or its significant differences, its significant lack of humanity. So that's one of the things we're going to look at in future episodes, is actually delving into the minds of some of these cosmic horror monsters and determining whether or not knowing their motivations either enhances or detracts from what is, generally considered the cosmic horror of that entity, is that its alienness, its indifference and detachment from us. So that's it for this week. I'd like to thank Dave Thomas again, because he's awesome, and he's engineering all of the fancy pants aspects of this particular show, all the technical stuff. If you want to show your appreciation, go check him out on Twitch. He's at twitch.tv/Meteor Notes. Did I do that right? Where he plays video games. I believe he's now entering into one of my favorite video games, which is Ark. And you can see his kitty cats trying to help him navigate the scary dinosaur laden world of Ark. You can also listen to The Horror Show with Brian Keene, where you can hear me and Dave and Brian talking about pretty much everything related to horror, business-wise, fun-wise, what's coming up, movie, book, TV, video game, music-wise. We talk about all kinds of stuff. It's really a good time. If you'd like to advertise on Cosmic Shenanigans, that would be awesome as well. You can send an email to Armand Rosamilia at ARMANDROSAMILIA. There's got to be an easier way to do that. At gmail.com. You can go to the Project Entertainment Network, and I believe there's a button on the website, which you can click, which will put you in contact with Armand Rosamilia, and you can discuss advertising on Cosmic Shenanigans there. If you'd like to check out Cosmic Shenanigans, past, present, and future episodes, you can do so for free on the Project Entertainment Network, on Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, and all other platforms, really, where we have podcasts. So check those out, and then I will see you next week, okay? Thanks for listening. Bye.
You're listening to American Top 40. More tragedy in the news today. Kim Kardashian has a new baby. What the hell? There's nothing good to listen to. Hey, wait, what's this?
Anything noisy. You gotta roll that out.
See, it makes me do weird things. I don't like it.
God damn it.
I'd be going down on myself.
Shit.
Hey guys, it's Bill
Mick.
Maya.
And Junior.
from the Unsupervised Podcast.
Check us out every Thursday on the Project Entertainment Network.
Take a break from the stress of the world and come have a laugh with or at us.
Bill.